What's up everybody? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and in this video, I'm gonna be giving you a quick tour of the brand new Drums and Drams whiskey room. Now, before we get started here, I thought it would be worthwhile to quickly remind you of what this room used to look like. It's not great, basically a glorified office space, but now as you can see, this room is much more whiskey centric, and I think it looks a million times better. Now, I know this might seem a little mundane to talk about at the beginning of the video, but I've gotta say, I am not an interior decorator. I have never kind of transformed a room to look like this, and the pre-planning aspect of this is what saved me a lot of money and a lot of time throughout the process. The first part of this is the creative pre-planning, which just means what is the overall vibe you're going for in your room. This might be kind of abstract. You might know that you want shelving, but you might want to figure out the color and kind of the theme. And the second part of this is the logistical side of the pre-planning, which basically means getting out the tape measure, measuring the available space that you have to figure out exactly what you're going to put where and what size these things need to be. So in my case, I ordered a lot of this stuff on Amazon, and because you can't physically see it in front of you, you have to rely on the measurements given on Amazon based on, what you've measured in your own room. And by doing all of this, I really saved myself a lot of time. I didn't have to return a single thing, and I was never questioning whether or not this was going to work out. But again, you gotta know 80 to 90% of what you're doing ahead of time. And if you leave anything to chance at the end, let it be something very small and inconsequential to the overall room that you are remodeling. Let's go ahead and get into it now. We're gonna start by taking a look at the main fixture of this room, which as you can see are the shelves behind me. Earlier in the video, I said I wanted to have a more whiskey-centric look to this room, and what better way to do that than to literally display whiskey directly behind me. So the way this works is that these shelves are divided into two units. The first is sort of the main shelving unit, which as you can see here is a set of 3 shelves, or 3 columns, I guess. And then over here, we have a standalone shelving unit, which is kind of cutting off the corner of the room here. Now on this main unit, I have most of my American whiskeys, bourbons, and ryes. And then over here, I have some of my favorite Scotch whiskeys, some glassware, and some other knick-knacky type things. The reason I chose to organize the room this way, by having the main shelving unit flat against the back wall, but also including the corner of the room here, really comes down to 2 main reasons. The first is that I'm doing my best to create the deepest possible shot here, from camera to background. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to keep me, the main subject, in focus and allow the background to truly be a background, basically just going for a more cinematic look here. And the best way to do that in a room that is very small, like this spare bedroom that I'm in, is to put the camera in one corner, which you obviously can't see right now, and shoot more or less towards the other corner in the room. The second part of this is that I wanted to have an asymmetrical look to the set. A lot of people do really great things by putting themselves in the middle of their setup, having shelves on either side of them that are exactly the same. But I am really, really picky, and if I had to have a symmetrical setup, these little things, these little imperfections would drive me nuts. So by doing it the way that I've done it here, I knew that it was gonna be a little slanted in the background, a little messy, and I would be able to cover up any flaws along the way. That way I wouldn't drive myself absolutely crazy with it. So that's kind of why I put the room together in this way. Let's go ahead now and look over here towards this sample shelf. This is basically just a shoe rack from Amazon. And the reason I picked this up as a sample shelf is because it's kind of hard to find a shelving unit that has shelves so close together that you can maximize storage space for samples. Now, having a YouTube channel like this is both a blessing and a curse. People want to send me whiskey, and that's amazing, and I'm so thankful for it. But eventually, after a few hundred sample bottles, you have nowhere to put these things. So a shoe rack like this from Amazon is pretty inexpensive, and it's a great way to store your samples. That way you don't have like 14 inches between shelves and you're wasting a bunch of space. Obviously on the top of that unit here, I have this light. It's sort of this industrial looking light. It has that Edison bulb look, and I love the yellow color that kind of contrasts against the backlights here with the shelving units. That brings me to my next point, which we should talk about, which are the LED strips that I've used on the shelving units behind me. Now, I knew that I wanted to have some backlighting, some accent lighting for the bottles, but I wasn't sure exactly how to make this work. I looked at some different channels, Jeremy Sears, Jason from the Mash and Drum, the Bourbon Van, Scott from My Bourbon Journey, a whole bunch of people, and I tried to figure out what would be the best way to light these shelves, and also I didn't want to break the bank. So I looked at a few different solutions. There is some tubing that you can get, there are LED strips. I ended up settling on these pre-cut LED strips because I didn't want to deal with trying to cut a big long spool of them. Sometimes you have to solder those connections, and I just didn't want to deal with all that. So I basically shelled out about $175 to light all of this. These are 12-inch, again, pre-cut LED strips. They have an adhesive on the back if you peel this blue layer off, and they connect with these little 4-pronged connectors here. So you plug it into one side of the LED strip. That ends up connecting to an extension cord, and then once you connect these things, you can snake it up the back of your shelving units. And, I basically used one LED strip per shelf, and I think it looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a great and sort of, easy to install solution here. And at the end of all of this, the way you control these lights is through a wireless remote control here. So you can change the color of your lights. I have it rigged up so I can control each shelf individually here, but you can see here I could do some different themed stuff. You can do Christmas lighting, everything like that. So it's a really great way to get different colors and different options for your whiskey display. All right, so let's go ahead and move on now. Talked about the shelves, talked about the samples and everything. Let's move on over here now to the bar cart, which is right in front of the blackout curtains that I got for the room, which really help control the lighting here. As you can see at the top here on the bar cart, I have a lot of glassware, I have some decanters, and all of this is being sort of illuminated by a little LED panel over here. This is kind of to provide a little bit of a symmetrical look. I know I said I wanted an asymmetrical set, but the lighting is a little bit symmetrical in that way, where I have the yellow light here and the yellow light over here as well. And moving down the bar cart to the bottom two shelves, I have a lot of daily drinkers here, and I also have upcoming whiskeys that I'm going to be reviewing. So it's a great way to stay organized. And also, I've just always wanted a bar cart, so this was a great time to splurge and get one of those. As we move past the bar cart, you're gonna see my desk here. This is the same table that used to be behind me in the old Drums and Drams videos, but it's great to be able to shoot reviews sitting where I'm at now and then take it right over to the editing desk and put things together there. I also love that this is kind of a multi-purpose space for whiskey reviews, but it's not only for whiskey reviews. I wanted to also have a nice little office space, and I like the way that that turned out. Now, just past the desk there, I have these short little shelving units, and they have samples and glassware and different things on them. They look a little awkward, but the great part about this is that the table I'm sitting at right now actually moves out of the way and slides right over these short shelving units and gets out of the middle of the floor. It's a great sort of modular solution for the room, and it allows me to not always have this room set up for whiskey reviews. I can have people over here and have some open space in this room as well. All right, so we have two more things to cover here. Let's go ahead now and check out the lighting in the room. I know I've already shown you the accent lighting behind me, but there are four main lights here that are really making everything work. The first light, and probably the most important, is the light directly in front of me. This is an LED panel with a softbox attachment. And on top of that, we have this grid. Now what this does in terms of the grid is it focuses the light onto me, and it prevents the light from spilling too much into the background. Speaking of my background, there are two fill lights on either side of this set. I know I have the backlights for the bottles on the shelves, but if you just had those, you wouldn't actually be able to see really any of the labels on the front of the bottles, and so you have to light these up just a little bit with these fill lights. Now these are both also LED panels with softboxes on top of them, but they're turned way down just to add a little bit of clarity and definition to those bottles behind me. And finally, one of my favorite lights in this setup is directly above me. This is a softbox that is boomed out overhead. It almost collides with the ceiling fan, and I didn't want to take the ceiling fan out of here, so it's just kind of awkwardly positioned up there. But what it does is it shines some light onto my hair here. It helps to outline me and kind of separate me again from the background. And it also lights the table up here so that you can see things a little bit better. So those 4 lights are how I am doing this setup here. It was a lot of trial and error, but I think the end result is very, very cool. The last thing I'm going to show you guys now is the sort of tech setup in front of me. So let's start with the microphone here, which is just out of shot above me. This is an AT4040 large diaphragm condenser by Audio-Technica, and it's boomed out on a very large boom stand to get it as close to me as possible. Now, if you look below that, you'll see the camera, the monitor, which is mounted to a monitor stand, and then this little tray table at the bottom, which has my USB hub and my audio interface. Now, this is really the coolest part of the room. On this monitor, I'm able to look at myself and check, how the shot looks from my camera, but if I change over 2 cables here, an HDMI and a USB-C cable, I'm able to transition all of this to a live streaming setup. It takes like 60 seconds to make that happen, and instead of my camera feed being on the monitor, it ends up being my computer screen, and I use a wireless keyboard and mouse here to make all of that work. Now, this is a 32-inch monitor that I have in front of me here. That way I can read the YouTube chat when I am live streaming, and overall, it's just a really great modular solution. I know I've already said that once in this video about this table moving out of the center of the room, but that was basically the goal, to have a really awesome whiskey room, but also something that can transition, can be multi-purposed, and I really think that everything turned out exactly how I wanted it to. So that's it, guys. That is the full tour. I hope this wasn't 30 minutes long, and I hope it turned out all right. I'm gonna get out of here, do all those good YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, click the little bell notification, and turn on all notifications to find out when new videos are coming out. And when I'm going live, you can check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. But until next time, I will see you later here on Drums and Drams. Cheers, and it's good to be back.